Welcome. It's great to be here with BDEX co-founder and CEO, David Finkelstein, and special guest, Fariba Zamaniyan. Fariba is VP of TV Data and Monetization at TiVo. She's a seasoned media industry expert with a proven career history of success in the development and scale of products that monetize data and technology for advertising. Fariba, thank you so much for joining BDEX for this fireside chat with our co-founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. David is a Forbes Tech Council member and serial entrepreneur who has founded numerous internet companies dating back to 1994. So let's get started with introductions. Fariba, since you're our guest, could you please start with a brief introduction?
Great. Thanks so much, Jesse. It's great to be here. And we've been so excited to partner with BDEX over the past year in bringing our television viewership data into the digital ecosystem. I've been working with TiVo through 2 or 3 acquisitions, which is kind of on par with the advertising and technology industry over the last 11 years. And my objective is to bring our television data services and some of our newer monetization capabilities into the marketplace with use cases that stem from access to the raw viewership data feed to what we're doing today with BDEX by bringing our audiences into the platforms that so many of the marketplace is using today. So excited to be here, and thanks.
And how about you, David? Is there what can you add more?
Sure. First thing I'd like to add is that while this is a fireside chat, I'm actually doing this poolside. So being that it's summer, I think it was a little more appropriate. But yeah. Great to have you with us, Fariba. Super excited about the partnership we've had so far over the past year. As everyone probably knows, I'm the CEO and co-founder of BDEX, and we are a unique data exchange platform that's designed to help brands reach consumers and understand their behaviors and intents. That's a lot of that goes behind what we're doing today with our friends at TiVo.
Thanks for the introductions. Now I'll hand it over to Fariba to get us started by please sharing a bit about TiVo for those that don't know much about the company today.
I'm glad you're asking me at the very start, because I think it's a question that, as I mentioned, I've been with the organization for the past 11 years, and I still get the question today as to, wow, TiVo, you're still around, and aren't you a DVR company? And the answer is yes to both, but we are a lot more than that. And TiVo has actually been a disruptor in the advertising and technology ecosystem for the past 20 years. I mean, we're most recognized for bringing the DVR to market, which was a real disruptor in terms of enabling, could you imagine, consumers to watch what they want to watch when they want to watch it by recording and time shifting their viewing later. And in actuality, that was probably our most prominent product, but TiVo's actually been on the forefront of change and the technology that's been enabling that change in how consumers find and watch and enjoy all of the incredible video content that's accessible today to them today. Our metadata fuels streaming apps, the search and recommendation capabilities for streaming apps, and probably most importantly, the interactive program guide that you're able to access through linear TV to find the content that you want to watch. And why that's so notable is because that technology has enabled TiVo as a pioneer in the marketplace to be able to passively collect the second-by-second consumption of linear, whether it's time shifted or watching it live, programming as they're watching it for all of the connected TVs within the household. And most important is that, a misnomer is that our television viewership data is sourced solely from TiVo DVR boxes, which is how we began, and the technology was enabled and found as a byproduct of what we brought to market. But in fact, our interactive program guide sits on top of more than half of the MVPDs across the US license that software. So that technology, think of it as the iOS of a set-top box. is what we've been able to leverage across a myriad of MVPDs, which span across tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, as well as all 210 DMAs. So it's a cross section of the US whom we're able to capture for all of their television sets, what content they're watching and when, but doing so not just on a breadth basis from geographic perspective, but also in a depth by having that perspective across the cable and satellite providers, big and small. So hopefully that puts some of that to rest, that yes, we've been around. We've gone through some changes over the last decade, but we've always been there in the background, and we're super excited from a data and monetization perspective to be a relevant component of the media and advertising technology space.
Yeah, Fariba, that's a great overview. And that's a great segue into talking about our partnership. So let's talk a little bit about the TiVo BDEX partnership. It's actually a two-part partnership. You know, we're helping on the identity side, help to match some identity data to help understand how to reach the TiVo audience across devices, which is pretty exciting. That's a big part of what BDEX does, is just helping companies that have access to consumers also be able to know how to reach those consumers across all their devices. And so that's a big part of what we're doing, but also the machine learning part, which is exciting. Being able to take consumer TV viewership, learn from it, study and analyze it, and then do the machine learning against it to expand and extend those audiences to a full nationwide scale is pretty exciting, and it's pretty cool. It'd be interesting to hear from you with respect to your experience and how this partnership helps improve the advertisers that can use those audiences that we're creating.
Yeah, it's amazing to see over the last decade how this vertical, this space of advertising enablement has changed. And really it's because of this convergence of digital infused in the linear space. And today they're almost as one, right? Especially as we've all got smart TVs and multitude of devices. When we first started out, when I brought TV data to the market 11 years ago, its primary use case was to optimize linear TV planning. And back then and today, I'm going to rip off a term I just picked up from a colleague this week. The focus became about niches to riches, in that the granularity of the data helped us identify, not just from a demographic and geographic perspective, what we call audiences, but really deeper into defining them behaviorally. So not just the demographic, let's say 18 to 49, and you live in the Northeast, but also a matter of what kinds of programming do you watch, down to the specific show level, that really started to spin the industry on its head as to, wait, what? I can place linear ads based on not just a demo, but also who and what they are within the household, so that ultimately for the advertiser, I can optimize the impact that this campaign can have on subsequent behavior. And so linear optimization was really the primary use case when we started out with this big data set of viewership captured passively, and really challenging the norm, which was a Nielsen model. And what has happened in the last several years is, with that convergence of digital on linear, is we realized that we need to be able to connect this linear audience to their devices and be able to not just look at a household level, but get to a person level and resolve that identity, but then also really repurpose and expand the use cases on this incredible data set that can be predictive of so many behaviors when analyzed across these niches, leading to riches. And so the partnership with BDEX is a very key one to us in achieving both of those goals. in the viewership data is currently anonymized through a third-party safe haven. And that safe haven has done the work of eliminating and protecting, from a privacy controlled perspective, our household information. So the household is now anonymized to an ID. But in order to be able to resolve all of the different touch points in that household so that we know what they're watching, but then have the ability in a digital environment to reach them with that same brand or commercial message when it comes to an advertiser, the BDEX partnership enables that with its core competency and identity resolution to be able to do so. So this is done on a deterministic level still, in that we're resolving at a household level, and then leveraging the device graph of BDEX to be able to then connect the dots and identify within to get to that person level capability. And that really segued incredibly nicely into this ability to bring pre-built audiences into the programmatic world, so that the demand, as it's increasing more than today, and some may say the hype is greater than it really is, but we all know that connected TV and CTV advertising opportunities, particularly as AVOD and other alternative services are expanding and increasing in terms of penetration in market, has really opened up this opportunity to bring our viewership audiences into that digital exchange process that BDEX has enabled us to do. So it's really exciting that we're available on a number of different platforms, readily available today, with the ability to customize to meet specific needs of advertisers, as well as the support, the third parties that support them. So we're incredibly excited, and so far everything's been going great, and lots more to come.
That's awesome, Fariba. And actually, that's one of the coolest things for me, because I've been in the digital space 27 years. So it's what's been cool about this whole thing is learning from you guys about the linear TV space, because honestly, that's a space that I really knew very little about. And so bringing the two together and as part of our partnership has been insightful. I think it's been really exciting for my team. Once they got their hand on the TiVo data, doing the analysis and the work on that, actually, from a data scientist and engineer's point of view, they always came to us and said, this is fascinating, So that's been a really interesting part for us, is just being a part of that when we're so used to being on the digital side of everything. And then our ability together to bring those two together has that's been exciting. So that's one thing that's been really fun for us on our side. And it's interesting to hear you talk about the sort of the strategy behind TV advertisers and how they're deploying their strategy against not just linear, but now digital as well. And one of the things that, we talk about a lot is data quality and how that affects return on ad spend. And so now when you're talking about digital, it's a lot easier now to measure that return on ad spend. And so we find that there's a lot of advertisers that are spending more concentration in their digital strategies doing exactly that. And so, we've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort on our side, making sure that we address the data quality issue. And so that, for me, segues kind of into another topic I want to talk about, which is not just data quality, but, in general, everything that's going on with respect to first-party data versus third-party data versus, data privacy and all of that. And so on the BDEX side, we've always taken data quality very, very seriously. That's something from the very beginning that we started analyzing when we started bringing data into our platform from so many different sources, analyzing the quality to understand what is, how can we detect bad data? And then being able to identify how that affects the advertiser. And what we found is we found a lot of data tied to bad IDs, right? So that could be from click fraud or bots and things like that. And so we started to detect that, and we started to basically identify this entire ecosystem is filled with a lot of invalid IDs that's due to click fraud and bots and things like that. And so that's where I think that making sure that anybody that's partnering with somebody is understanding the level of quality or the work that's going into being able to measure and detect the level of quality to make sure that when you're building audiences, whether it's in a partnership like what we're doing, or you're taking a first party data and trying to say, okay, well, let's build a digital audience out of that you understand, and that whoever you're working with understands how those bad IDs can affect the quality, and ultimately will then affect the value of that audience that's being created and the return on ad spend that comes out of that. And so, that's my perspective, and that's what we've been doing. But it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective, what your thoughts are around TV advertisers and what they need to know when it comes to first party data as it relates to TiVo, because TiVo's data, we always say it and you always say it, this is deterministic data, this is data that is coming directly from TiVo. But I don't know that everyone and the advertisers always know where their data is coming from when they apply an audience to a campaign. So how do you talk to advertisers about that?
Yeah, it's amazing too that, over time to see the ebbs and flows in perspective in the marketplace. And I think that when big data came into the, market as being accessible, it's especially syndicated data sets, there was a real excitement level because it's granularity and it's big. But what became, hyped on is, if it's big, I want more. I want as much of it as I can possibly get. And it became more of a scale. It was about scale. Everything was scale, and it didn't matter what was under the hood. And unfortunately, what was learned is that it does matter what's under the hood, even when it's a big data set. So similar to your point about IDs that are false or inaccurate, in the TV data space, there were a lot of sources that were just pumping out data that in fact were modeled and not representative against a seed, an actual data set. And what advertisers who are on the receiving end, whether it was aggregated and sent to them or disaggregated, learned is there was no impact on their use case, which is typically to do measurement assessment and then deploy a campaign against those learnings to hopefully perfect what had been done in the past with the intelligence gained. And what we've now learned is that quality trumps quantity, because it doesn't matter if you have 50 million households in the set, if they are all in one geographic region, which we know from a linear perspective, linear TV data, there's only a certain kind of programming that's available in certain regions, whether it's provider level or what county you're in. And so it was more of a quality that was about representation. Even if it's not 50 million, 3 million is sufficient if it has a distribution of the various types of households. And this goes back to the basics of market research and sampling, and how Nielsen built a multi-billion-dollar business that it has, that we all kind of poke fun at today. But what their objective was quality. And today we have a better method of getting to that quality through a passive means on a big data set. So advertisers have learned the hard way and are keen to question the quality and the representativity of the data more than they are when it comes to measurement. So I want to caveat that when it comes to measuring return on ad spend. So the behavioral pre-post change in behavior to impression delivery, what is that, measurable difference in their behavior, whether it's to go to a dealership, change brands, or buy more of the same product. So I think that's been a fundamental shift that comes through learning. Unfortunately, a little live and learn. There's no lesson book that's out there, although there's guidance from various associations that are reputable, that give guidance on how to work with big data, but they're learning about this too. This has all just started in the last decade, whereas we've been practicing other methods for many, many more decades. So there's also a learning curve. And when clients think about their own data and first party and how to tie that with these available data sets, they want to make sure that it's of the same caliber as what they maintain. And then the ability to map that data, meaning let's say site visitation or actual product purchasing, that they're able to map with confidence, quality, and accuracy, because the decisions that are made are high risk that come from those efforts. And a high risk decision takes a lot of time to evaluate and determine if it's worth that risk, especially when you're up against a normative procedure that they've been following for many, many years. Change is hard. And especially when it comes to well-established brands. I'm not talking about some of the newer direct-to-consumer brands that have been operating in a digital environment from their inception. I'm talking about packaged goods and traditional brands that rely on methods that have basically built benchmarks and procedures internally that are in the process of being updated because of this digital convergence that's now happened. And so it's very exciting, but also we take those steps with caution because there is so much risk associated with it, not just behavioral change, but also when it gets into the conversations of privacy protection and just the utility of data as well. So a lot's happened, but the good thing is that change is on the horizon, acceptance of this change, and seeking partners that are reputable, credible, and have validated their methods is in demand.
Yeah, actually, Fariba, you just said change is hard, and that's it's something that everybody's being forced into right now. And everybody's been talking about the Google cookie deprecation thing lately, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but actually that is a big change that the industry's been used to third-party cookies for a long time. It's not a big one that affects our partnership because we're not doing a lot in cookies, but from an advertiser's perspective, it's an interesting thing that they have to deal with right now. And there are a lot of people that basically a couple of weeks ago just kind of went, thank you. I don't have to worry about cookies for a while, with Google delaying it. But I think that that's a mistake, on a lot of people's part, that, if the change is coming, you've just been given, a much bigger window, which is good, but that window is going to get small really fast. And so people need to not just sit back and be like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about this for a while. I think that they still need to worry about it. And they need to start planning new strategies so that window doesn't close on them again. I don't know what conversations you had with people, but that, my thought process is there that they really need to stay on their toes with this thing and make sure that they don't get complacent and end up in a situation where it becomes an emergency.
Agreed. I think the more, I don't want to use the word sophisticated, but let's just say the more experienced advertiser has probably put into place some type of bridging exercise. And bridging is typical when you're going through change, in that you have an opportunity, a window of time to concurrently try a new method that ultimately is going to be that method from which you then move forward in time. And it gives you that window to test alternatives, to ensure that your trends, as you're gathering this information and gathering prospective customers to your brand, or at least to show interest, that the alternatives that are going to be forced with the cookie deprecation is that you've got this window of time to do that bridging exercise. And that bridge is going to prepare you for that change once it comes. and you're not going to be scrambling and realize this enormous disruption ultimately that could happen in sales. And that's really the name of the game when it comes to the advertiser, is that none can afford, especially if a competitor has taken the time to build, I think of it as like, this way dates me, but it was real, but the Y2K. I mean, the 2 years preparing for Y2K and what was going to happen potentially was a great exercise in getting ready for what is the worst that could come. And it forced us to move, to rethink. And I think that's what this is going to do. So I think we've all been given a gift with a delay. And it's, the sophisticated experienced advertiser has probably got wheels in motion to prepare for that change. For those of you that have not, suggest getting started. Because time goes by fast, if anything. We've learned that over the last year globally.
Yeah, that's a great point. Y2K is a great analogy there. That's perfect. So I want to talk a little bit about the machine learning side of our partnership, so people understand how we're employing machine learning to your seed data to extend the audiences. And we call them extended audiences because they do contain the seed data. So there's a lot of deterministic data in there, as well as the extended machine learned data as well. And what we're doing on the accuracy side of that. And so, a lot of people sort of fear modeled data because they don't understand what the basis of that model is. And I think it's important to understand, one, the basis of the model, so that there is an actual seed in there. So we do have real TV viewership data in there, and that how we're analyzing that data against thousands of other data points to make to build a model essentially of what a specific type of TV viewership looks like. And then what we do on our side is basically take every other consumer, every other household, and do an analysis of those same 1,000 data points or whatever it comes out to be against that profile that we build, and then essentially build that extended audience. But then we take it a step further, where we've talked before about quality and accuracy being so important to us, where we actually take that initial seed of data and put that back through the model to make sure that if those consumers came up, that they would match to the model that we created, and doing that with accuracy up to 90%. I think that's really important because there's a lot of modeling that goes out there, what people call lookalike modeling, that doesn't employ the same type of accuracy testing, and historically, has been tested to have really poor accuracy. I mean, you're talking 30 to 50% on average, and so we're excited about being able to create something that can have that level of accuracy. And I'm interested to hear a little bit about how you talk to advertisers about that, making sure they understand that so that they can leverage those audiences effectively.
I love this question because there's so many, there could be a really deep discussion on it, and that we'll save that for another time. But what, for me, as I started my career as a marketing and advertising researcher, and what I say when discussing with the advertising community in particular is that this is the next level of what we've been doing historically when it comes to balancing and projecting data, okay? In that it starts with the sample. And in the old days, minimum of 25 was good enough. And you could take that 25, balance them relative to census, and then apply a projection factor that takes them and blows them up to represent the population they represent. And what's happened is we've now been able to do that. So, excuse me for oversimplifying it, because what you guys do is incredibly advanced. is we've done it through the technology that's available in machine learning that not only takes the limited number of data points that we had and had to do it by hand back then, that now enables the machine to do it, but also to do it with thousands or millions of data points and inputs, which only increases the precision level. Whereas in the old day, it was like, oh, you only need 5 factors, 5 variables in order to balance and make it look like that group. Where now we've got behavioral data, we've got attitudinal data, we've got geography, we've got demos, you name it. And so at the basis of what we do is real data though, however, in that TiVo is providing, as we said, the second by second deterministic first party. This is actual data that is the basis of what we then are able to create the niches or the audiences that represent the groups of interest in the marketplace on a custom level, et cetera. And that group then, again, taking techniques that we've been using for decades, takes those real households and says, now I'm going to make them representative of their universe by essentially projecting that audience to be the universe based on the millions of data points that you're able to, through the BDEX platform and intelligence platform, are able to identify and enable an advertiser to reach at scale these custom audiences that go much deeper into those behavioral groups that actually have an impact on sales, or that they truly need to reach, whether it be a sequential campaign, I'm going to start linear and go to digital, or if it's a retargeting initiative based on the results of some of the work linear, or purely digital. And working with BDEX has enabled TiVo, because let's face it, no one has 100% data collection of every household in the US from a TV data perspective. There's too much fragmentation. There are walls that are up because you have to make an ad buy in order to get access to data. So a consistent or pure microcosm of every single type of TV is just not available today. So what the industry is forced to do is work with disparate sources. And what TiVo helps do is provide that sample that kind of spans across all by having all different cable providers, different TV, television set types, over the air, geography, depth of geography, county A to D, by having that representative actual base and then working with BDEX to then extend those audiences is really an impactful application for the market, but also the fact that through BDEX's methodology, that seed ultimately is what you come back to define the accuracy, determine the accuracy by validating the universe that's been created from that seed is consistent with the seed that went in. So that is critical to going back to the earlier question about quality over quantity. So when it comes to activation of advertising, size does matter. And so scaling, but also retaining the quality is incredibly important. And that's what we've been able to achieve with our partnership with BDEX.
And you make such a good point about doing the analysis of the volume of data at scale, because even just 5 or 6 years ago, we couldn't have done what we're doing today, because the processing power that's required to do that would have been, it would have been cost prohibitive. I mean, there's no way you could do it. And the time that it would have taken to process all that data. And so today we can scale up servers really quick and process a ridiculous amount of data, and then scale it back down and get it all done pretty quickly. So that's a big part of it, and it's amazing to think about just that, 5 or 6 years ago, it just couldn't have been done. So let's switch gears real quick on, the Olympics are around the corner. And so one of the things that we did together is build some audiences that are specific to the Olympics. And so tell us a little bit about the conversations you're having with advertisers about these audiences, as well as, some of the other things that we have done for some customers around customizing audience.
What the flexibility is really the other feature that comes from working with a big data set like viewership data, because there's so many different pockets of behavior that we can leverage to create audiences, not just for the buy side, the advertisers, but also on the sell side, for those that are looking to promote new programs, upcoming shows for the fall season, et cetera. But no one is greater than a tentpole event like the Olympics, where this year, given the delay, the investment in the Olympics from an advertiser perspective has exceeded expectations in well over $1.3 billion already invested. So it's big money. Big demand equals big money. And when you think about big demand, it always means mass. And you can't get granular when you're thinking mass, but in actuality, you can. And so what the Olympics, given the various types of advertisers, whether they're affiliated with an athlete, a sport, the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, there are so many opportunities in 2 weeks to reach a niche audience, is why we created the Olympics audiences, to help marketers really rethink how they are going to reach the various types of, let's say, in sports enthusiasts, of what are they going to just watch gymnastics, or are they going to switch to swimming, the track? So having the data at their disposal enables them to reach these niche audiences to have the greatest impact. So we're super excited that we're able to leverage the data that we have at our disposal for past Olympic events to create these segments and make them available for general use. But more importantly is the custom capability, and that there isn't one size fits all for everyone in the marketplace. Though we have segments such as light TV viewers, particularly for those that are interested in reaching cord cutters, that is a segment that is high of interest. But we get a lot of requests from marketers who, for example, are going to be doing a brand integration with a program and want to be able to have an audience that's based on, let's say, heavy and light viewers of that program, should it be a regularly airing entertainment show. So the customization is certainly there, and to then overlay it with what BDEX has at its disposal, with the thousands of categories and different data sources that it has, to be able to create, for example, in the automotive space, not just that you're a light TV viewer, but I want to target pickup truck owners who are driving a Ram truck, or that I want to reach a small SUV, they're in the market for a car and they're not brand loyal. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility that we have, and working with BDEX has enabled us to bring those to the platforms of choice for those customers, basically in real time. And that has been an incredible extension of our offer.
Awesome, Fariba. It's getting really hot out here. So I'm gonna, cut us off and say thank you for joining us for this poolside fireside chat, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great working with you and the rest of the team at BDEX.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Your thought leadership is crucial in the advertising landscape.